All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for the Oregon State Board of Agriculture meeting. Today is Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. This is Elin Miller, Chair of the Board. This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to begin by asking the Department of Agriculture Board Coordinator, Carla Valnes, to review a few housekeeping items for the meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Hello. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to remind people to please mute your phones or computer audio during the call to prevent unnecessary background noise. We also request that only board members and presenters turn on your camera during the call. And if you are joining the call online or by conference call, pre-meeting materials are posted on the ODA website at https://ODA Direct Board Agriculture. Or items will be posted after the meeting. And a reminder that this meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, Carla. Carla, would you please call the roll for introductions? I'll begin. Elin Miller, Farmer Umpqua.
Chad Allen is delayed this evening. Barbara Boyer is not in attendance. Ryan Harper, not in attendance. Ty Kluwer.
Ty Cleaver, Klamath Falls, Farmer Rancher Brewer.
Miguel Lopez is delayed this evening. Kirk Mogg is not in attendance. Ellie Norris.
Ellie Norris, Farmer Umpqua.
Eric Oram.
Good evening, Eric Oram, farmer from Heppner.
Josh Zielinski is not in attendance tonight, and Dean Simonich is not in attendance tonight. So Director Sharpelo-Hansen.
Lisa Sharpelo-Hansen, Director, Oregon Department of Agriculture.
We'll go around the room quickly. We'll start with Chris.
Chris Benneman, Oregon Department of Agriculture. Courtney Cole, Governor's Office. Lindsay Eng, Oregon Department of Agriculture. Leslie Tamura, Columbia Board for Growers.
Tammy Denny, Oregon Cattlemen's Association.
Maria Marquez, Oregon Department of Agriculture.
Elizabeth Savory, Oregon Department of Agriculture.
Temple, Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network.
Casey Prentice, Oregon Department of Agriculture.
John Santa, Oregon Department of Agriculture.
Katie Murray, Oregonians for Food and Shelter.
Karen Withers, Oregon Seed Association.
Rachel Hankins, Oregon Seed Association.
Bill Miller, Farmer Umpqua.
Dave Dillon, Food Northwest.
Thank you. And for the folks that are joining us online, if you would please use the chat box for a sign-in sheet so we have your name and organization, so we have that record. And again, pre-meeting materials are posted on the ODA website at oda.direct/board agriculture.
Thank you, Carla. We appreciate everyone being here this evening. If you would, please announce your name in advance of your comments before you make any comments for the record, and particularly anybody joining us virtually as well. We have a great pleasure to have Courtney Kroll with the Governor's Office here this evening, and I'd like to invite her to come forward to give us a few words. I've been on the board for 4 years, and this is the first time anyone from the Governor's Office has come, so thank you for taking the time to be here.
Okay, how am I? Oh, it works. Chair Miller and members of the board, thank you so much. For the record, my name is Courtney Kroll. I am the I have double roles. I'm the Governor's Regional Solutions Coordinator for Eastern Oregon, as well as a Natural Resource Policy Advisor. So I actually come from an ag background. I grew up in Baker City. I currently still live there. I'm kind of the 6th generation cattle ranch. Grew up out there. But I get the pleasure of being the policy advisor for the Oregon Department of Agriculture. So I am kind of your liaison to the Governor's Office. So normally I am in Eastern Oregon in Baker City, but I randomly am in Salem for kind of monthly meetings, and I found out that I was here on a night that you guys were actually here, so I was like, oh, I can actually join you in Salem. So I just wanted to stop by, introduce myself, put a face to a name. If you guys have any questions or concerns, obviously Lisa and I talk very regularly, so you can always use that, but you can also reach out to me. And I just want to also thank you guys for your service. I know how much time and energy it takes to be part of boards and commissions, and signing up on the Workday system and going through all that process. So I know how hard that can be, but it really is important to have voices across the state and from varied backgrounds helping us sort of kind of figure out what we want to be doing here in, related to agriculture in this state. So that's all I wanted to do. I'm happy to take any questions if you guys have for me. I've been working closely with ODA for a number of years. I've been in this role. I started with the Brown administration and have stayed on the COTEC administration. So I've been around the governor's office for a while. I've only been the policy advisor for ODA for a couple years, but I've worked really closely, and you have a wonderful team here at ODA that I know you probably know about. But it's been just a joy, and I'm happy to sort of take any questions or comments.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the things is we're serving on the Board of Ag, and apologize for folks not being here. We completely changed our format. We used to have dinner now, blew in for workshops by 6 o'clock. And so I think we may have had a little cross purposes, and then other people are excused absences too. So, but a question, when we talk about policy and issues facing agriculture today, and obviously our report highlights much of that, but at the same time there's some real and now issues that happen that we have a resolution process, or we could do a letter to talk about, hey, we should be, have an issue with this, or should be supporting that, etc. How best, I mean, obviously working with Lisa and Jonathan and the rest of the team, but how best to prepare to make sure it's good to go to get to you, ultimately maybe the governor if necessary? How does that work?
Yeah, and I don't know if, Lisa, you want to add, I mean, I have weekly or biweekly meetings with Lisa where we're talking about everything that's kind of going on within the agency and outside the agency. So a lot of times, if those things are kind of coming up on your guys' agenda, we'll kind of have been having kind of conversations behind the scenes. But for sure, we want to make sure that we're well coordinated so that, you guys don't have any surprises from us. We don't have any surprises. I mean, I think that's one of the things I think that can be really helpful. But Lisa, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
I think you're right. I try to operate in a no surprises mode on the regular. And so, if you have an issue, we can figure out a way to move it into the governor's natural resource office. There's several avenues.
Yeah.
To do that if I can't get a hold of Courtney. So definitely easy enough for us to move things along if we need to.
And the other thing I'll maybe add is the other thing, I think, unique, great thing about sort of the natural resource team is we, as you all know, we probably know, we have 14 natural resource agencies and multiple boards and commissions across the state. So bringing it also, having it go through Lisa and then kind of up through me, and then we can also share that with other boards and commissions and other agencies through our cabinet. So that's also another kind of avenue.
And I think the other thing, and we have a great relationship with Lisa and her team, and at times too, other regulatory agencies, there's cross, working together on a variety of different things too. And so to the extent you can be a champion too for us in encouraging that we're all working together on issues that do cross lines as far as jurisdiction with other state agencies, that is great.
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And Director Lopez just joined us. Thank you. All right, Courtney, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate that. All right, just a little 101 on resolutions. The board makes policy statements by adopting resolutions on topics and issues that face the agricultural industry. Currently, the board has 27 active resolutions, including Resolution 320, which we passed at our last meeting on ag overtime that was adopted in December. Each year, the board routinely reviews about 8 to 10, and I'm just doing this as a primer because sometimes our process is a little confusing to some folks. We review about 8 to 10 each year to ensure that they remain relevant and determine if it should be archived or any changes should be made. And you can find a whole list of all of our active resolutions under review at the ODA Board of Agriculture webpage. We really value opportunities to hear from the industry, which is all about what tonight is all about, to help keep us informed of the topics and key issues that you're working on that you want to bring to our attention. This evening we have 14 organizations, and in light of a pretty packed hearing that is occurring now, some people may be straggling in a little late. You're here to provide an update on industry priorities and legislative updates. One organization has also provided us written comments that are in the meeting packet for all of us. Each organization will have 4 minutes of time to come up to the speaker table, and I'll introduce you in groups of 3, but again, with the timing with that other hearing, we may have some stragglers, so we'll just have to deal with that. So first of all, I do know that she is here. Columbia Gorge Fruit Growers is here. Food Northwest, Dave. Friends of Family Farmers, Alice. So you're the 3, and the next 3 up, just so you'll be waiting and anxious. Oregon Association of Conservation Districts, Oregon Cattlemen's Association, and Oregon Climate and Agricultural Network are next. So, great. I'll go ahead and maybe, Leslie, have you as chair of the organization kick it off.
Okay. Nice to see you again, Chair Miller, so soon. Members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of Columbia Gorge Fruit Growers. We represent the pear, cherry, and apple growers in the Mid-Columbia region of Oregon. And just to give you a layout for this year, our crop volumes look like they will be returning to a more normal level this year. So after a few years of light crops, that's a good sign. The pear and cherry bud potential is very good for our region. There's potential for a large crop. Of course, that depends on a lot of factors between now and then, as we all know. But the fact that crop volumes have the potential to return to a more normal level is going to put a lot of pressure on pricing if we don't have all of our traditional markets available to us. While our primary target is the domestic market and a large percentage of our fruit is sold in this country, we absolutely rely on the export market to move the crop in a timely manner. For pears, Bartlett and Bosc are popular varieties in Canada, with 15 to 20% going there each year. Our biggest concern right now is the importance of the Mexican market for Anjou pears. That's our main variety. Mexico takes 30 to 35% of our Anjou volume each year. And for cherries, Canada is a primary export market. We also rely heavily on China, Taiwan, and South Korean markets. Cherries, as you know, are extremely perishable. They must be moved quickly to preserve their quality. So these export markets are critical to be able to sell our crops while they're still viable. And the bottom line is that market disruptions due to tariffs will have an extremely negative impact on the profitability of perishable crops like pears and cherries. So we're watching activity at the federal level very closely. For regulatory issues, as you know, ag overtime is currently at the 48-hour threshold this year. In 2027, it goes to the permanent 40-hour. And while the 48-hour limit is manageable for us outside of our harvest season, we really won't have a lot of options as an industry that requires a lot of hand labor when we get to the permanent 40-hour threshold. Our employees will start to feel the effects of this now as we start limiting hours and pay increases to account for the additional cost of overtime, and those consequences will go into full effect in 2027. Our ag labor housing rules are also changing. After a 6-year rulemaking process that we participated heavily in, some of those changes will be effective at the end of this month and others coming over the next 2 years. Our largest concern is the loss of housing capacity due to these new rules. We're looking at a reduction of between 20 to 40% of our housing due to these rule changes. And as we cannot afford to build new housing to make up that lost capacity, we're looking at a reduction in our workforce. And because many of those larger infrastructure changes are coming right at the time that ag overtime hits the 40-hour threshold, at a time when we need additional employees, we're going to lose the ability to house even our current capacity, let alone extend our number of workers. So that will be a real trial for us when those two policies intersect. As far as legislative priorities for this session, as I'm sure everyone's aware, House Bill 2548, which the hearing is still going on, creates Ag Workforce Standards Boards. This creates an unelected governing body with the authority to dictate wages, establish workplace health and safety requirements in addition to those already set by Oregon OSHA, and set wage and hour laws in addition to what BOLI already has in place. This also eliminates at-will employment for agriculture and dictates how farm employers can discipline or terminate workers. All other sectors in Oregon would remain at-will employers, but if this passes, agriculture would not. And frankly, there's no reason to have yet another layer of regulation that far exceeds what is already in place for workplace protections, nor is there a reason to single out our industry in this way. Another priority for us is funding for OSU statewide budgets. It's critical that OSU be funded to continue their important research. We rely on the work of our local research stations to improve our yields, our quality, and our resilience against environmental challenges. When the federal terminations occurred in February, our local USDA Ag Research Service lost 75% of our post-harvest researchers. They've since had a position reinstated, but we are still lower on that side of things. So the research and work they do to make sure that our fruit can last from field all the way to the other countries we export to is critical. And lastly, we are also in support of House Bill 3010 that creates a state-led Spanish language pesticide education program to provide bilingual pesticide education classes across Oregon to meet regulatory requirements, including worker protection standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Dave, we'll turn it to you.
Okay, Chair Miller, Director Sharple Hansen, members of the board, thanks for the chance to present to you this evening. My name is Dave Dillon. I'm president of Food Northwest, which is the trade association for food and beverage companies in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. The food and ag sectors in Oregon are critical drivers for our state's economy, and they're pillars of communities both large and small. On the food side, 2,600 Oregon-based food companies directly employ over 35,000 Oregonians, making us second only to semiconductors in terms of manufacturing employment. And the indirect total employment for the food sector is over 120,000 people in Oregon. Importantly, food making is present in all 36 Oregon counties, which is a distinguishing feature in the manufacturing space. And these jobs are essential contributors to the smallest towns and the largest cities in Oregon. And we often hear about the urban-rural divide, and so we kind of bridge that. Food Northwest was a partner with the Oregon Business Council and Senator Ron Wyden in convening a food and beverage task force that held 15 listening stations across the state to learn about the challenges and opportunities ahead for the food sector in Oregon. After that, 30 food leaders met for many months to distill these findings down into some actionable steps. One of the outcomes of this effort was HB 2689, which has passed out of committee and is now before Ways and Means. And unlike many things that we would present to you in terms of legislation we don't like, we actually do like this bill and support it heavily. The bill does two things. First, it funds a study to deepen our understanding of the challenges and opportunities that the task force identified. You know, Oregon has a higher level of food entrepreneurship than most other states, but we have a lower rate of success in growing those businesses up to a sustainable size. And we also have an environment where we're competing for capital from both companies that operate in Oregon and also companies that we hope to attract here. Subjects for deeper study in the bill include workforce and energy needs, the need for affordable capital for startups and small and mid-sized food companies, the need for greater co-packing capacity, and the regulatory barriers to greater growth in the food and beverage sector. The legislation provides ODA the funding to perform this study. The second piece of the bill is funding a domestic marketing program, again at ODA, for Oregon food and beverage products. The return on investments from ODA and federal international marketing efforts are phenomenal, and we believe a domestic program can elevate Oregon products here at home with the same kind of success. In the regulatory arena, we continue to work with agencies, right now primarily DEQ, to create rules that achieve Oregon's environmental goals, but at the same time setting standards that are attainable both technologically and economically for our food and beverage companies. Current headliners in this area include the Climate Protection Program and Extended producer responsibility, which are both in rulemaking, and various water quality issues that continue throughout the state. I do want to mention egg prices while I'm here. This might be a subject that you've come across. Maybe some of you have personal experience on either side of the equation. Egg prices are on the way down. This week, we've seen $1 per dozen national average drop, and the future trend line looks like it's going to continue to go back down. You all being around agriculture, I think, can understand the impact of having to cull, over 160 million birds over the last couple of years. And also, that's not the end of the story, that then you need an interval before you can actually clean up and use that space again. And then, of course, there's a national supply of chicks and layers that comes on the tail of that. So disruptions have been significant, substantial. The supply is really the issue here. I was on the phone with an egg producer a couple of months ago while he was looking at an auction board for eggs. At that time we were talking, he said there are 270 people looking to buy eggs, and there are 7 who have eggs to sell. So that gives you an idea of kind of the scale of what we're looking at. Thankfully, our region is ahead of the curve in rebuilding our laying capacity. And in fact, Oregon and Washington together are on a trend line to whereby I think probably May or June, we will have exceeded the number of layers in operation that we had before COVID and before we had the cage-free mandates. So that supply issue in our region is going to be addressed. A wise person in the egg space told me the cure for high prices in a market economy is high prices. So when you have high prices, capital moves that way, investment moves that way, and the problem can address itself. Food making in Oregon depends on a productive and profitable ag sector, of course, and we thank ODA's for its effectiveness in supporting healthy agriculture in Oregon, which is essential for all of our success.
Great. Thank you, Dave. And I appreciate everybody staying on time with, I know we only gave you 4 minutes, but thank you very much. Everybody's being really concise. Alice, Friends of Family Farmers.
Hi, everyone. Director Hansen, Chair Miller, and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. I represent Friends of Family Farmers. We're a statewide nonprofit that's celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. We represent over 1,600 small and mid-sized, highly diversified and local market farmers across the state. I'm going to keep it very focused on the priorities that FOF is putting forward in the legislature this year, the first of which is HB 2164. This bill represents a collaboration between us and the Department of Agriculture. This bill is to provide funding from the general fund for 2 FTE phased in over the next biennium for the state meat inspection program, specifically for inspector positions. So I'm sure that you all are aware of the ongoing saga of meat processing bottlenecks here in Oregon. This is an issue that I know everyone has been aware of for decades, but we really saw it come into sharp relief during COVID. We only have, I think, 13 USDA processors here in Oregon now, and the farmers that we work with tend to be outside the contract system, and they're reporting 12 to 18-month wait times to get appointments at processors consistently over the last 5 years. And that has posed a lot of challenges in meeting increased demand for local food. Folks have delayed herd expansions. They have had to process meat in custom exempt and just hold it in their freezers and wait to eat it from their own family because they can't get into an inspected processor to bring it to market. The state meat inspection program, we really want to be grateful and say thank you to everybody at the department who's been involved in that, because it has been a long road. And since it was authorized by the legislature in 2020, then the cooperative agreement signed in 2022 with USDA, and all of the investment that I know ODA has moved into the $11 million that was brought down from the state to move into setting up new facilities and bringing facilities up to that state inspection standard from custom exempt standards has been a huge undertaking. And unfortunately, we got into a budget pinch where the FTE for the inspectors that the program was saying it needed to fill the demand of all the new facilities coming online was not able to make it into the agency budget this year, the governor's requested budget for the agency this year. So we worked with folks at ODA to find out what the right number was. We brought forward a proposal, HB 2164. It's a committee bill in the House Ag Committee. And that the fiscal impact of that for the first biennium is just about $273,000. Very reasonable when it comes to the legislature. And that bill did unanimously pass out of the House Ag Committee and was then remanded to Ways and Means. So it is sitting in the Natural Resource Subcommittee of Ways and Means right now, and we hope that we will continue our unanimous support from folks who recognize that this is really closing the loop on a vital program that we are really grateful for everyone's efforts in building. The second bill that we are bringing forward today, or not today, this session, is we really want to address the problems related to water access and equity in our state when it comes to commercial gardens. So I know that this is a very small scale solution that we're proposing. We're talking about HB 3372, which we have just been assured will have a hearing sometime. And well, that's what they say right now. You know how the legislature goes. But in the last 2 years, we have seen an increase in enforcement on illegal use of water from domestic wells on very, very small scales. There are 2 exemptions that are currently in the law. You are allowed to irrigate a half acre at any level for whatever you want, as long as you do not sell a single thing that comes off of that half acre. You are also allowed to use 5,000 gallons per day from your domestic well for any single commercial or industrial use, as long as that commercial or industrial use is not irrigated agriculture. It is the only thing that is excluded from that commercial standard. And that has made, that coupled with our farmland prices rising at about 29%, according to the Census of Agriculture, between 2017 and 2022, that's a per acre average figure across the state and is 3 times the national average, has really made entry into the farm space very, very difficult. So we are looking for a balanced solution that acknowledges, and I know I'm over time, that acknowledges natural resource restrictions, but also provides an entry point for folks who want to get into farming and establish some farm income to qualify for FSA loans and products to help them get onto further land or to just feed their community in the meantime. Those are our 2 legislative priorities, and thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Thank you to the entire panel. Just because we haven't done this, I think last year we were virtual, and other years we've been virtual. But do we do Q&A for each group, or how? Carla, help me with the.
You certainly can.
Okay, she goes, uh-oh, we're running out of time. If there are questions, not that I'm encouraging, no. If there are questions from the board for any of the panel members up here right now, or we can also follow up with you guys afterwards. Okay, great. Thank you guys, appreciate it. So the next 3 up were the Oregon Association Conservation Districts, Oregon Cattlemen's, and Oregon Climate and Agricultural Network. And the following group up, just to warn everybody, Oregon Dairy Farmers Association, Oregon Organic Coalition, and Oregon Seed Association. So
Andrea is online tonight.
Yep. Okay, Andrea's online. Okay, great. Okay, so actually, Andrea, you're kind of next in line. So why don't we go to you? Hopefully, you can hear us well.
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
So good afternoon, Chair Miller, Vice Chair Armand, board members. My name is Andrea Kreiner, and I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Association of Conservation Districts. We support and represent the 45 soil and water conservation districts around the state, which, as you know, are special districts governed by elected boards. The districts protect and enhance soil quality, water quality and quantity, and habitat by providing technical services and supporting voluntary conservation in partnership with farmers, ranchers, and other private landowners and managers, as well as federal, state, and nonprofit partners. With so many bills this session, we're trying to hone our focus onto bills that impact positively or negatively the ability of SWCDs to do their job. So this includes money bills that support our work, juniper removal, natural working lands fund that you'll hear more about tomorrow, as well as bills that impact the amount of land that will be available to do conservation work on. So we find ourselves commenting on quite a few land use bills this session. Again, our focus is land that will be available for conservation as our lens. We're also keeping our eye on water bills and wildfire bills from the lens of impacting our ability to work with landowners on conservation and restoration work, as well as wildfire resiliency. Another set of bills we're keeping track of is the solar siting bills and the regulations. We actually sit on DLCD's solar or LCDC's solar siting in Eastern Oregon Regulatory Advisory Committee. Again, from the lens of both land available for conservation and mitigating the impact to the agricultural economy in a county where such facilities are sited. And lastly, the bill we're supporting and sponsoring this year is HB 3010, which you heard from Leslie, for OSU to provide in-person worker protection standards training in Spanish to help our farmers meet their regulatory requirements in the most effective way. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Andrea. Tammy?
Chair Miller, Director Sharpelo Hansen, good evening, members of the Board of Ag. My name is Tammy Denny. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Cattlemen's Association. The trade association represents Oregon's 11,000 ranchers who produce 1.2 million head of cattle. So this is a very large organization, system-wide, and represented in every county across the state of Oregon. It makes this position very unique as we attempt to address the broad issues that affect and impact this industry statewide. In the packet that I provided you, there's a short list of issues, not comprehensive. Our comprehensive list exceeds 1.5 inches in stack, and it's front and back. It represents the more than 300 pieces of legislation that we're currently following in this legislative session. Of course, we're not able to speak to every single one of them, but we're working across the Ag and Natural Resource Coalitions to lean in where we can and join our fellow ag organizations to work to either oppose or support pieces of legislation as needed. On the short list that is in your packet on the left-hand side, you'll see wildfire funding. So, and what is a little bit funny is 4 out of the 5 bullets start with a W. So wildfire funding comes back to us because of the passage of Senate Bill 762 that passed in 2021. Many of our ranchers who happen to be cattle owners and cross into the timber sector have now been shouldering that tax burden that was unfunded when 762 passed in 2021. That's unacceptable, and we are working diligently to find a mechanism in this session to shift that burden back to where it belongs, and that is within the state. So that burden, that taxation burden, should not have shifted to our ranchers who were certainly unexpected, not expecting that burden to hit their pocketbook. The wolf compensation bill, Senate Bill 777, we're encouraged that it may pass out of committee as of Tuesday. And wildlife damage is a pilot program where we're working to find mechanisms through setting up landowner programs where on a regional basis, so landowners who have experienced wildlife damage, they are going to participate in some pilot programs if we can get pieces of legislation through this session, but that remains to be seen. And we will continue to work maybe towards the short session if we're not successful in the long session. The bill that is taking up quite a bit of time for us and for the department are the brand fee bills. We have one in the House side, we have one on the Senate side. We're hopeful that we're going to be able to see those compromised and come together in a bill that is helpful to across the industries that do utilize the brand inspection services. We appreciate all of the time and effort that many of the staff members within the Department of Agriculture have devoted to a 13-month advisory team process that has been laborious and taken us down deep rabbit holes, but they have hung in there. So thank you, Director Sharpelo Hansen, to your team. Thank you to the team members who I know are present tonight. We really do appreciate them, and we're working to get that issue resolved before the conclusion of the session. With that, I will stop, but thank you so much for your service. I know this is a time sink for you and your family members and taking time away from your farms and your agricultural operations, so thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Any quick questions for this set of panelists? And again, we can look at following up with questions later too. Sorry. Oh, Megan, I am sorry. It's called 3 people, but there were 2. Anyway, I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's getting later.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate you keeping these straight. And by the way, we also now have officially been joined by Chad Allen, who had a meeting till 2 o'clock in Tillamook, and it's amazing you're here already. So thank you. Megan, please. Sorry about that.
No problem. Chair Miller, Vice Chair Orman, members of the Board of Agriculture, I'm Megan Kemple, Executive Director of Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network. ORCAN convenes a producer-centered network to promote soil health for climate resilience on Oregon's farms and ranches through collaboration, education, and advocacy. There are over 1,000 farms and farm service providers and others engaged in our network, including farms, ranches, vineyards, orchards. I'd like to share about our priorities for the 2025 legislative session. We're advocating for the investment of $5 million for the Natural Working Lands Fund in OWEB's budget, as included in the governor's recommended budget. A portion of this funding would go to ODA. The Natural Working Lands Fund provides incentives and technical assistance to help landowners, land managers, environmental justice communities, and tribes adopt practices that support natural climate solutions on Oregon's natural and working lands, including farms and ranches. In addition to ODA's important work to address invasive annual grasses on rangelands, which you'll hear about tomorrow, this funding launched OWEB's new grant program providing payment for agricultural practices with ecosystem services benefits, including carbon sequestration. The same agricultural practices that mitigate climate change help farms and ranches be more resilient to climate impacts. We're really excited about this new grant program providing payment for practice. Continuity of this funding is really critical. As you know, when funding's available one year and not the next, interest in programs decreases. It's confusing for producers. It's difficult for farms and farm service providers to anticipate what will be available and take best advantage of it. In addition to the broad support of the Natural Climate Solutions Coalition, 25 farms, ranches, vineyards, and ag business from across the state have endorsed the funding request. We're also advocating, and to be clear, I'm not sure that I specified, that's a renewal request. It was $10 million was allocated last session, and we're asking for 5 this session. And that's included in the governor's recommended budget. We're also advocating for funding for the Oregon Ag Heritage Program. OAHP protects working ranch and farmlands for their ag and natural resource values through 4 grant programs, including conservation easements and conservation management plan grants. Our other priority is House Bill 2979, which provides funding for Oregon's farmer and rancher disaster resilience grants, as well as similar funding for food hubs and farmers markets. The farmer and rancher disaster resilience grants are supporting Oregon's small and underserved producers to be more resilient to fire, extreme weather events, funding things like shade cloth, trailers for evacuation, and irrigation efficiency. This funding is a great alternative to traditional disaster relief funding, as it's given farmers the resources to maintain their crops and livestock through disasters rather than being compensated by the state after they lose them. It's a strategic and responsible use of state funding. For example, rather than compensating a producer for their failed blueberry crop, the state could make a small investment in shade cloth, or rather than losing their animals to fire, a farmer could get a trailer to evacuate. These investments can last for years and also leverage federal funds from NRCS and other sources. The first round of the Farmer and Rancher Disaster Resilience Grants awarded $1.6 million to 114 small farms and ranches across Oregon, and round 2 closed at the end of January with over 200 applications requesting $3 million in funding. Overall, $7 million were requested with $2.5 million available. So you can see that demand far exceeds the funding available. That bill passed unanimously out of House Ag Committee with over 200 submissions of written testimony and support, including a letter signed by 248 farms, food hubs, farmers markets, and community orgs. And if you're interested in advocating for any of these priorities, we welcome your support as individuals or in a coordinated effort. I'll stick around and you can connect with me after the panel. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Thank all three of you. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, the next coming up is Oregon Dairy Farmers Organic Coalition and Oregon Seed Association. Then on deck is Oregon Seed Council, Oregon Water Resources Congress, and Oregon Wheat Growers League. All right. Tammy, I think we're kicking it off with you.
Great. So I just arrived from the Capitol where we were participating in House Bill 2548, and it would be really refreshing if we could celebrate Oregon agriculture, all of the positive things that we do, how hard our producers work, the proactive work on the environment with our animals, with so many different things. And it's really painful and exhausting to go and defend ourselves when nearly all of our producers do an amazing job. I mean, in every walk of life, there's a few bad actors, but by and large, if we don't treat our employees well, we don't have employees. It should be simpler than it is, and it'd be nice to talk about marketing and a lot of things that we could be doing for agriculture, but I looked back at my notes from 2 years ago, and at the time, on the federal level, we were talking about trade, immigration, farm bill, dietary guidelines. We're still talking about trade, immigration, and the farm bill. Nothing's changed there. At the state level, of course, we had our hearing today. It'd be really nice if we could talk about ag overtime, to create some fixes for that for the employees that have had hours reduced, and to make it more equitable, better for them, better for our employers. It'd be really refreshing to have some of those proactive kind of conversations. On a national level, dairy is extremely regulated. We have our National Farm Program. 99% of all the milk in the United States flows through farms oversight. And that includes animal care, the environment, workforce development, biosecurity, third-party audits. And if you want to ship milk, you comply with these standards. Every couple of years, the standards are raised. Animal care was the first area. They call it a silo, pun intended. Now we're at Animal Care 5.0. And so that was implemented July 1 of 24, and that goes through June 30th of 27. So on all of these different levels, dairy farmers across the country are required to meet these standards. And I would say most of our producers exceed them on many, many levels. Thankfully, bird flu, the outbreak started last March in Texas, and it's consumed an awful lot of time and energy, a lot of conversations about biosecurity, working with our veterinarians. Dr. Ryan Scholes, the state veterinarian, has done an excellent job working with us, answering questions. We had a webinar within the first month, and thankfully we still have not had a dairy positive outbreak, but we continue to be vigilant, updating our biosecurity standards. We provided a letter of support for a grant that Dr. Scholes had written to hire some OSU students to be working voluntarily with farmers that voluntarily want to improve their biosecurity protocols. And so I look forward to continuing to work with him and to enhance those protections for our producers. Some of the positives: we are supporting an increase in milk truck weights. It would be in some select areas of Eastern Oregon, and I think it would be a real positive to have 20% less trucks on the road, be able to haul a little bit more milk. One area they're looking at is in Ontario, outside of Vail, and they already have an exemption for sugar beets. And so these would be over the same roads, the same bridges, so we know that they can handle the same amount of weight. But it would create some efficiencies for the processors and for the producers both. There were 3 Senate bills that we supported: building Oregon's natural resource workforce through education and career pathways, Senate Bills 784, 785, and 786. It's nice to support natural resource education, and hopefully those will move forward. And sadly, we've also been very supportive of Senate Bill 779, the agri-stress helpline. We have an awful lot of stress in our ag, ranching, rural communities. Comments that I shared earlier today, Oregon is significantly higher than the national level for suicides. Tillamook County is more than twice the level of the national suicides, and it's tragic. It's really tragic, but it is something that we absolutely are supporting, and it's nice to see hopefully some permanent funding for that. A lot of things that we are opposing. Tire tax hearing last week, you probably already heard about that, proposing a 4% increase on tire sales that absolutely would hurt our rural producers. We already have cat tax expenses that we can't pass on, and it's been difficult to see more expenses added to our producers.
Tammy, if we could have you wrap up too.
Yes, I was wondering about the red light. I didn't ask about time.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that
it is 4 minutes per.
Okay.
So, okay. All right.
Our dairy farmers are really proud of the work they do, of the high quality, nutritious, and affordable product that is produced every day, the care for the environment, the care for our animals. And in the last 5 years, we've lost about 30% of our farmers. And more regulations will continue to impact more consolidation. So anything the board can do to help promote a more accurate understanding of what our producers are facing would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move on to Tess Milo with the Oregon Organic Coalition.
Great. Hello, everyone. Chair Miller, members of the Board of Ag. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Tess Milio, and I'm representing the Oregon Organic Coalition. And this is a new role for me. I'm only a few months in, so please bear with me. But I'm happy to be back working in the ag sector on ag policy. And again, I'm grateful that you invited us here. So thank you. The Oregon Organic Coalition was incorporated in 2008, and it works to promote Oregon's organic industry and community by bringing together farmers, businesses, and affiliated organizations. OOCC provides leadership, advocacy, and support to expand the organic sector while building resilient regional food systems. Obviously, this is a growing sector, and so it impacts growing, harvesting, processing, distribution, and more. Many of the cornerstone Oregon organic brands that you might be familiar with are members of our company, including Oregon Organically Grown Company, Hummingbird Wholesale, Mount Rose Herbs, Organic Valley, New Seasons. There's a lot more, but I'm going to skip past that. The Oregon Organic Coalition's priority this session, we're really focused on Senate Bill 887, which would add a position at the Oregon Department of Agriculture that would be an organic policy specialist position. So this is a new position that we're asking the legislature to fund. We had a really nice, lovely public hearing last week, and the bill did get voted out of committee just yesterday to Ways and Means unanimously. So we're really happy about that, and we'll be working on it down there now. This session, the Oregon Organic Coalition has also supported House Bill 2689, which I believe was talked about earlier, to promote the purchase of Oregon-made food and beverages at ODA. And the OOC has long supported the ODA's POPs for domestic marketing, and our coalition director has been working closely with ODA's Trade Department on the USDA Organic Market Development Grant Award deliverables, like bringing organic producers to trade shows. So we're also supportive of other things we're supporting in this session, are the Oregon Ag Heritage Program, House Bill 3131. We are supporting more funding for the Natural and Working Lands Grant Program, the Farmer and Rancher Disaster Relief Funds, Double Up Food Bucks, Food for All, and others, including several components of the agency budgets, including ODAs. So we'll be weighing in on those, and that's all I had for you today. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And is this Karen or Rachel?
Rachel.
Rachel, great, because we had two names here. So since I hadn't met you yet, Rachel, thank you.
Director Hanson, Chair Miller, and members of the board. I'm Rachel Hankins, a board member of the Oregon Seed Association. The Oregon Seed Association represents a diverse membership spanning various company types and geographic regions. Our legislative focus is on policies that impact our members' abilities to operate efficiently and cost-effectively. Our primary priorities include those that raise costs, reduce market access, or affect product marketability. The Oregon Seed Association is dedicated to advocating for legislative measures that support the growth and sustainability of Oregon's seed industry. Additionally, we monitor secondary concerns such as supply chain challenges, labor, chemical regulations, packaging materials, and transportation, all critical factors influencing the seed industry's success. We prioritize policies that preserve and protect agricultural land. We support initiatives aimed at conserving farmland, ensuring its availability for current and future agriculture use. We promote fair and ethical business practices. We advocate for regulations that uphold the integrity and transparency in the seed industry, aligning with our commitment to full and truthful representation of seed quality and descriptions. We encourage collaboration and educational and regulatory bodies. We endorse policies that foster cooperation between the seed industry, educational institutions, and regulatory agencies to develop sound and effective seed programs. We support legislation that enhances Oregon's agriculture development. We back legislation that supports the growth and development of Oregon's agriculture sector, benefiting both the industry and the state's economy. We oppose legislative actions that threaten agriculture business. Agriculture is a unique and important part of Oregon's economy. Due to this uniqueness, we face challenges that other businesses may not. We don't support things that disrupt ethical business conduct. We stand against policies that may encourage or overlook unethical practices within the seed industry, and things that hinder cooperative efforts. Legislation that impedes collaboration with educational and regulatory bodies is contrary to our mission. Through active engagement with legislators and stakeholders, the OSA strives to ensure that the seed industry's interests are thoroughly considered in the legislative process, promoting policies that align with our mission. Currently, we are focused on House Bill 2548, as you've already heard throughout this session tonight. We would feel that it would negatively impact the seed industry because of the added layers of regulation that are unnecessary due to the protections of agriculture workers that are already in place. We are also supporting House Bill 311, I missed a number there, I apologize, the Clean Truck Initiative that Shelley Bosshart Davis is sponsoring. We feel that the Clean Truck Initiative is going to adversely affect our industry and other ag stakeholders. I thank you for your time, and we do have some membership directories on the back table if you'd like to become more familiar with our association.
Great. Any questions of the panel? And hopefully we're going to see everybody at the reception this evening too, so we can have a chance to chat there as well. So great. If we could end up having Oregon Seed Council, Oregon Water Resources Congress, and Oregon Wheat Growers League come forward. And on deck is Oregon Wine Council, and I don't think they're here, but Oregonians for Food and Shelter and Oregon Farm Bureau is on deck. And then next up, but there's only 3 seats. Actually, since there are only 3 seats and Fawn's not here, if we could have Oregon Association of Nurseries to come up in the next time around. Okay. Oregon Seed Council.
Great. Good evening, Chair Miller, Director Sharpela Hanson, and members of the Board of Ag. For the record, my name is Megan Chenard. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Seed Council. And for those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, the Oregon Seed Council is the umbrella organization for the industry. So you just heard from one of our members a moment ago. We represent all involved in the industry. That's seed researchers, brokers, dealers, growers, and through our membership, we represent 1,300 grass seed, legume, and specialty seed farmers. Our industry drives employment in rural areas of the state, employing an estimated 10,000 Oregonians. I want to thank you for the opportunity to join you tonight and provide an overview of our legislative priorities. As many of you know, it is a tough time for agriculture across the board, and in particular for the Oregon seed industry, we're facing a number of legislative and regulatory challenges, in addition to challenging markets, and we're navigating the aftermath of poor yields from 2023. We had a really harsh weather season of dry climate, late winter, and have been navigating that through trying to develop crop insurance. And that, I think, is our shining spot for the grass seed industry, as we've been able to work with the USDA, RMA, and bring them out to Oregon to see our production and work to start perennial ryegrass into a grass seed policy. However, our members are also navigating other impacts, such as the implementation of the 2022 legislation, Ag Overtime, which you've heard about from many other folks who have presented this evening. This policy is not yet in its full effect and has already hit our producers hard. First and foremost, for this legislative session, we are concerned about the legislation that is being considered before the legislature today, and many of you were in that room. House Bill 2548, the Agricultural Workforce Standard Board. Our members have turned out in quite a large amount of numbers to pack the room and help illuminate the challenges of this problematic legislation. House Bill 2548 proposes a sweeping one-size-fits-all policy that would truly become the straw that broke the camel's back for many of our members. It creates an unelected governing body with the authority to set increased regulations and ultimately inflict significant cost hurdles on Oregon farms that are struggling to stay afloat. These costs would be implemented at least every 2 years, with a process wholly outside of the legislature. It also eliminates at-will employment. While ensuring this crippling policy does not advance is our primary focus right now. Of the over 3,000 bills, we are tracking, like many others, in the hundreds of bills. For us, it's about 400 bills this legislative session. So some of our policy areas that we're engaged on, of course, like others, we would love to be seeing Ag Overtime come to the forefront and be something that we can work to find a fix for. But many of our energies are being moved to the Ag Workforce Standard Board right now. Bilingual pesticide training, House Bill 3010, you've heard about. That's an important move for the industry to be able to ensure that workers are getting the appropriate training that's culturally appropriate in person and can help them comply with regulatory and environmental practices and to be safe. We are supporting funding for the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program. You are probably seeing through comments of folks in the industry, we're seeing a change in who's running farms now, and we need succession planning tools. This provides a tool. We also are supporting OSU extension and overall funding, and I will stop because I know I'm over time. I'll send you some written comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Megan. April.
Thank you. Chair Miller, Director Hansen, members of the Board of Ag. For the record, my name is April Snell. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Water Resources Congress. We're a nonprofit association founded in 1912 that represents irrigation districts and similar water suppliers who deliver to farms and ranches all over the state, including carrot seed folks in Madras and all sorts of different crops, even some wheat. I would love to be here to say all the great things that are happening to make things better, but I think you've already heard from other colleagues to know that that is not the case. And in many years past, water is often a very small subset of the bills that are out there. And so in addition to all the other issues that you've heard about today, there are a huge amount of water bills that are out there this session, hugely impactful water bills. And unfortunately, a number of them have some potentially very negative consequences to everybody here in this room, and they've not been done in a very transparent way. So
I guess in trying to make it where I can give you an overview and then somehow finish in a positive note, that may be a bit of a struggle. But our members are local government entities who are charged with delivering water through canals, pipelines, reservoirs, different types of systems. So we've always been sort of we're in agriculture, but we're also government. But I can tell you, we are with our agricultural partners and allies on all of the issues that they've brought up today. And we know that without farmers and ranchers, there's no need for irrigation districts. And I'm very concerned about the direction that building is going when it comes to agriculture. They forgot where their food comes from, and they forgot where their water comes from, and they've lost sight of what the value of agriculture is. We're going to need your help to help remind them of what that is. So on a positive note, we also have over 300 bills. One of the bills that we're working on that is one of the concepts we introduced this session is related to aquatic invasive species, which I understand you guys will be talking about the plant side of that perhaps tomorrow. But for our members, we're very concerned about quagga and zebra mussels getting into water infrastructure. And so we introduced a bill that would allow for irrigation districts and other government entities to partner with the state Fish and Wildlife to have boat inspection stations, primarily in rural eastern Oregon and other places that do not have boat inspection stations, and also have reservoirs that would be susceptible to these organisms. So that's a positive bill that we're bringing forward that hopefully will provide a small solution to hopefully keep a very detrimental species out of Oregon's waterways. Now on the other side of things. I could talk about a lot of other bills, but the bills I'd like to highlight is two bills that are on the Senate side, Senate Bill 427 and Senate Bill 1153. Both slightly different, but would in essence put a stop to any water right transfer in the name of the environment, but doing so in a way that would create new standards that don't currently exist today, putting additional burdens on the Water Resources Department, who already struggles with meeting both their existing service needs as well as litigation. The second bill, Senate Bill 1153, is much more dangerous. It's not yet been scheduled for a public hearing. It's been brought forward by the governor's office, not Courtney, just to be clear, and was done so without anybody in the water use space having a heads up on what that would contain. We were literally given the language the day it was introduced in committee. So I mention that because it is something that, while usually water is a small part of this overall conversation, I know everybody in this room knows that without water, there's no food and there's no fiber. Again, it's disappointing that the folks that are making the decisions are divorced from where those impacts are. But I'd like to hope, and again, thinking about the positive side of things, that by getting folks out on the ground, showing them the collaborative solutions that everybody here is working towards, we can hopefully defeat some of these very negative proposed policies and get back to what Oregon is best at, which is coming up with collaborative solutions together that meet all of our needs. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Amanda. Meet.
Good evening, Chair Miller, Director Sharplow Hansen, and members of the Board of Ag. Amanda Hoey, I'm the CEO for the Oregon Wheat Growers League, and I'll talk through a number of challenges, but I'm going to start with a positive, and that is that this upcoming year marks a historical point for the Oregon Wheat Growers League, and that we will be 100 years old in 2026. Wow. So to commemorate the significant date that we have coming up, the League has worked on HCR 12, a House Concurrent Resolution, which would designate February 11th, 2026 as Oregon Wheat Day. So the designation certainly allows us to celebrate agriculture, celebrate wheat in particular, but most importantly, it's a jumping off point to talk with the public about how they can value agriculture and its contributions that it's made, not just over the last 100 years, but beyond that point. So it looks at the development of our industry and what it will take as we move forward into the next 100 years. So as we take a look at that, that's where things do take a mixed view. And our policy agenda is really shaped by a complex set of forces, not just state level, but also on the federal side. And addressing some of those issues as we look at our sustainability does include some of the core investment into research. So there are a couple of things that we've supported. We support the funding for the Oregon State University statewide provide programs to get them up to the current service levels that are necessary in their funding support. And for us, that includes the investment to restore positions that had been cut within this last year. We have spent decades in developing new wheat varieties that are more drought tolerant, use fewer inputs, and allow us to more efficiently apply fertilizer and other inputs. And those are really essential to continue that investment over the decades. And OSU statewide are a key partner in that, both for the research that's conducted as well as the extension services and grower outreach. As well, we have a proposal for more durable investment, which is Senate Bill 768, and that's a cereal grains endowment bill. We have one of the first endowments that were created through industry at the OSU, and this would allow us to match contributions that producers make into research and further incentivize partnerships that bring in dollars outside of state resources. So clearly, though we know that research is not the ability to provide the sustainability that we need and cannot address all of our challenges on farm viability. So you hear a lot of commonality already within the industry panels, and I think you will continue to as we have additional speakers, and that is some issues where we are opposing the increase to the cost of our inputs, those that would restrict further access to them, and as we continue to see high input prices and challenging market prices facing that reality, we're opposing any bills that would restrict the ability for our farm operators to make decisions that are essential to their operations. And that includes, as you heard from a few, the hearing that was going today on House Bill 2548 on establishment of an Ag Labor Standards Board. So we do face some unique difficulties within wheat, though, some pressures on land use conversions into other industrial uses such as solar, uncertainty on freight and other factors. So our work is very much overlaid by those market and global components. So continuing into a little bit more positive before I end, we do have a couple of markets that have a couple key dates coming up. We'll celebrate the 60th anniversary of our Taiwan office through U.S. Wheat and 70th for Japan, and Oregon wheat growers were really the force behind establishing those offices. So as we look at the export potential for the state and where we have already grown, that is a good partnership that we have with the Department of Ag to focus on what that means for bringing into our state. And with that, I do want to end with a thank you to the department. Your staff has always been available for us as we look at the challenges that we face and appreciate the board's attention. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you to all three of you. Appreciate it. We'll see you at the reception. Funberry is still over the Capitol. She had grabbed me earlier today and said she'd probably be late. So my assumption is she's not going to be coming. So I'd like to call up Oregonians for Food and Shelter, Katie Murray, Oregon Farm Bureau Federation, Greg Atkinson, and Bill Perry from the Oregon Association of Nurseries. Thanks. All right, Katie, why don't we have you kick it off, and then we can go to Greg and then Bill.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chair Miller and Director Sharpelo Hansen and board members. My name is Katie Murray. I'm Executive Director of Oregonians for Food and Shelter. We are a membership organization, a nonprofit that's been around in the state since 1980, representing a fairly large proportion of the natural resources sector. We have members across agriculture, commercial forestry, anywhere from a small operator that owns their own ranch all the way up to pretty large companies and corporations. So on behalf of actually a lot of the organizations that are here today as well, we're focusing primarily on three areas: pesticides, fertilizers, and biotechnology. Anytime those issues come up, either in the legislative space or in the regulatory space or at the county level, anything that would impact the use of those tools by our members and the broader industry, we are there to engage in. Our primary goal is to ensure science-based policy around these tools. These are often emotional issues. There's a lot of misinformation swirling constantly. And so we're really out there trying to make sure that any conversation or decision that gets made is based in science, there's data, there's evidence. We know exactly, we're all talking about the same thing. That seems like it shouldn't be a lot to ask, but actually, as it turns out, that's a pretty big challenge, the number one challenge in everything that I've worked on in my 5 years at OFS. We're also here to promote innovation in the natural resources sector, just as we promote innovation in every other sector. This is a big topic across manufacturing, healthcare, every sector except agriculture, where, you know, we think that we should just go back to pulling weeds by hand. So, you know, innovation and these tools are going to be just as critical to agriculture and forestry as they are in any other sector, and we really want to promote that idea and and defend the idea that, you know, modern food and fiber production is going to involve technology. I mean, I can kind of go into some of the bills that we're working on. There's a lot. I'll give you some examples, but largely we're just playing defense. We've got House Bill 2679, which would restrict an entire class of pesticides, neonicotinoids. We had Senate Bill 747 related to fertilizer reporting. We have several bills that relate to the use of genetic engineering or biotech in aquaculture. So there's a variety of bills that kind of get at all three of our priorities, where we're trying to engage and make sure that there's, you know, a scientific basis or justification. And in many cases, there isn't. You know, there's either bad science or no science. A lot of the bills that we see related to the issues that we work on are politically driven and really just lacking any connection to impacts on the ground or science or evidence behind them. So I also just want to flag the work on groundwater. There is another bill from the governor's office that we just learned about a couple weeks ago, Senate Bill 1154, that is going to make significant changes to the groundwater protection statutes. We have been working with the governor's office. We understand there's an amendment coming. This is happening concurrently with the regulation that ODA is planning related to irrigated ag in the lower Umatilla Basin. So there's a lot happening in the nutrient and fertilizer space. OFS is kind of the point organization for this. I'm sorry, I don't see my timer. Oh, it's okay, it's red now. Sorry.
Doing this.
Okay, so just flagging those. Really quickly, I want to mention House Bill 2809, which raises the cap on pesticide registration fees that are paid by my members and other pesticide registrants. We came on record opposing that bill, largely because we see that those funds over the years are not going to the core service that they're intended to go to, and there's many programs that get stacked on and added on to these funds. We really can't support increasing more fees on our members when those core services we don't see are going to get increased. And we just really want to flag that for conversation in the future. Anyway, we appreciate our partnership with the agency. We appreciate working with the board and your staff, and really just want to encourage your continued advocacy for agriculture and the broader industry and your help with a lot of these issues. So thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Greg Addington, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair Miller, Director Hansen, members of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Greg Addington. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Farm Bureau. I'm sorry, I got a mess here. I'm going to go through it the best I can. I'm frustrated from a hearing I just came from, which I'm going to talk more about here in a minute. But just generally, let me start and say that Oregon Farm Bureau is the state's largest and most inclusive ag organization in the state. We have 6,500 family farm and ranch members that produce more than 200 different commodities in every county, every corner of the state. And we have members with a few acres, and we have members with a few thousand acres. And we welcome them all in all different farming styles. As has been discussed a little bit, I mean, first of all, I'm just going to say I really appreciate our partners in the room, the commodity-specific organizations, groups like Katie's, that there are so many bills. We're tracking 800 bills. And, we're a general organization that kind of looks at everything: transportation, land use, water, all of the above. But we can't do it without all of these groups helping out. It's overwhelming. And I'm going to hit on just a few of the things, and I'm sorry, I'm frustrated again today, and you're gonna hear a little bit about that. And it's just a rough time right now in ag. I think all of you understand and know that. My members are feeling it. Their frustrations are high, and I'll say some of these things are going to be my opinions, but I think they're pretty well informed by what I hear from my members. I'll start with three of the bills that we introduced this session. I'll call them priorities. They're priorities for us, but they're not. I mean, the priorities change when the legislature starts, and our priorities now are playing defense on any number of bills. The bills that we introduced, livestock and community protection districts. You may have formerly known this as predator control districts. This just allows landowners to petition a local government to set up a district to help pay for a government trapper or wildlife specialist. Again, landowners can opt out of these if they don't want to be in them, but for those landowners that are in certain areas of the state that are having significant problems, they want to have this tool available to them. It existed before it sunsetted a few years back. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty fair. It's not going to cost the taxpayers any money, and it's maybe not going anywhere. Again, my frustration is going to come through here. We had an ag competitiveness study bill, House Bill 2166, moved out of committee. It's in Ways and Means. It's the second time it's gone out of committee and been into Ways and Means consecutive sessions. It's basically asking you, the Department of Ag, to do a study and help us identify some of the challenges and opportunities. So we'll see what happens with that. Unemployment insurance. Right now, if you use the guest worker program, H-2A program, H-2B program, you as an employer have to pay unemployment insurance on those workers, and you have since 1993, but those workers are not eligible to use that unemployment insurance. So we'd like to fix that, and I don't know if we will, but we're going to try. My time is going fast, so let me just end and say House Bill 2548, which you've heard about, the Workforce Standard Boards, is the most potentially devastating bill to agriculture in recent memory. If you think ag overtime was bad, this is far, far worse. And Megan and others did a great job of talking about it. But let me just tell you, the minimum wage, the bill requires minimum wage or the adverse effect wage rate to pay workers. That's in the H-2A program, and that's $19.82 an hour right now. So immediately, that's going to be the cost of labor. And that doesn't include getting rid of at-will employment and requiring all kinds of other things that we have many laws that already do. So much more I could talk about, many more bills I'm concerned about, many of them you've heard about, but I'll just end and say, I'm a little frustrated, you're hearing that. I really appreciate this group, and I think that my organization does as well. And one of the things we want to do is really engage with you guys more. And so you'll see us regularly, and we want to be part of solutions with you guys moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Oregon Association of Nurseries.
Excuse me, Chair Miller, Director Hanson. For the record, I am Bill Perry with the Oregon Association of Nurseries. Jeff Stone is in DC, so I got sent in this place. You can decide whether that's a step up or step down after my presentation. So kind of the same thing, the frustrations that Greg had mentioned. So we came into this session trying to go, okay, how can we make things better, at least stop the bleeding? So obviously our number one priority was trying to freeze ag overtime and add a seasonal exemption ag overtime. We were informed very quickly by legislative leadership in different ways that that was not going to be an option. And then on the flip side, we get the ag workforce boards, which are completely in the opposite direction. So being from what I would term as helpful to agriculture to obviously probably one of the biggest threats we've ever seen. We've heard about these, so I'll just kind of keep a lot of these brief. The other thing that we came into this session was trying to deal with water transfers, as we spoke talked about. And so our bill, House Bill 3501, is obviously operating of the process that, we're not going to get more water rights, no groundwater rights, in-stream water rights. They've pretty much made it so you can't get new water rights. So the future of agriculture is all in the way we can transfer water. And obviously, so what we're trying to do with 3501 is in essence hold the process stable so we can basically move towards that. Obviously, as we've heard about, there's two new transfer bills that I would term as don't really keep the process stable, for lack of a better term. And so that's going to be the debate as we move forward. The other thing we introduced was obviously because of these increasing costs, we introduced House Bill 2118, which is a green goods tax exemption. I do think there's going to be discussion on CAT tax exemptions and potentially estate tax, moving the estate tax floor up, for lack of a better term. I think all of these are going to be difficult in this budget environment because they're going to want to say, I want to be left cost neutral, which means you would raise the tax on some of the other industries or higher income people or higher sales volumes inside some of these. And so I don't think that's something a lot of us want to do, is pass a higher tax on somebody else so we can get a benefit. But we're hoping that they'll have those conversations without what they were calling the tax neutrality side of things. And then the other thing, I guess, to end on a positive note, a kumbaya moment. We know the Japanese beetle was not included in the governor's budget. And so we obviously introduced Senate Bill 576. We're hoping, we've been told that we're probably going to be getting a hearing soon to continue that program. Obviously, we have asked that you guys cannot advocate for bills. We're aware of that. But obviously, I think you'll be asked by the committee to at least give the progress of where we're at and what probably needs to be done without being in an advocacy position. But so I would expect that coming forward. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks. I didn't even hit the yellow light.
Wow, you made up for the other two. So anyway, well, literally, thank you, everybody that's been here. Are we missing anybody that had either signed up and I didn't get? Carla's always good about that. So thank you very much. It's critical that we have a good understanding. And also, I hope we will hear from you if we are out of line on anything. And again, I will do a rah-rah to take a look at our resolutions very carefully and make sure that those are in alignment with your thoughts. All the public is invited to comment on those, and we do get a lot of public comments on some of those resolutions, and we appreciate that. So again, thank you to everybody that was here, and we will be adjourning to our reception. And where will the reception be?
Other side of the wall.
The other side of the wall. So anyway, thank you, everyone. Appreciate. I will go ahead and close this meeting to reconvene tomorrow morning at 8:30. Thank you.